Yesterday, my friends would remember, I mentioned that there was a blind spot that existed in vision and how the brain functioned in order to cover that blind spot, and I showed that it was an example how the entire world is produced as an image in our brains. When we have a perception problem in our brains, it is very definite fact that we cannot reach the external world, but we are only encountering an image that is formed in our brains. So those images, the image of this world actually is only a subjective perception that is given for every individual. And I'd like to give you another example related with this. For instance, there is a color blindness, a type of color blindness, and there's a cortical color blindness, which is another example of this disease. And in the V4 part of the brain, which is related with color perception, then this illness named cortical color perception arises. And in that kind of an illness, actually every person perceives the entire world in shades of gray color. They cannot see the different colors. Actually, they are able to observe everything very easily, all the shapes and forms, but it's just like watching a black and white TV screen. They only come across shades of gray color. We know that there is an internal part, the middle part of the brain, and when there is damage there, then there is another disease which is blindness of movement. And in that kind of a damage, the brain cannot perceive movements. They are blind to the perception of movements. Actually, they can see the entire world as an image, but if an object moves, they cannot perceive it in a flow of actions. Actually, it's just like images coming after one another with no connection. So they cannot cross the streets, they cannot just pour coffee in a cup because their movement is damaged this way. They cannot perceive the movements in a flow, and this is just like talking to a telephone according to this description, because they cannot see the movements of the mouth. For instance, when you're talking on the phone, you only hear the voice of the person, you cannot see the image. It's as if that way there is no movement, there is no flow of actions in that person's lives, everything is stable. It is really a very extraordinary miracle, because when we are thinking about the images that we see, everything is very clear and all the objects are observed and perceived with great clarity, and Allah creates all these images in this way. And we know that while we are taking photos, this clarity cannot be perceived, because you may have different movements. While it's moving, you cannot photograph that image with great clarity. However, with our eyes, we are able to focus everywhere. We can exactly see a clear image, a clear shade of colors and clear movements every moment that we see with our eyes. And Allah creates this clarity this way. And also, Allah creates all the details, the movements, the shades, the colors. All these are created in great detail, and if there is any problem in the brain, we know that this perception is influenced, and we know that the brain is the only source where all the images occur, and if there is any damage in the brain, then that perception is directly affected. And if people were to see anything outside, actually, they would be able to perceive that car moving towards it, because it cannot perceive it. This means that perception is in the brain, that perception occurs in the brain, and there is a problem in the perception of that image. And Allah creates all these as causes, so that we may think that all are perceived as sensory information. And what Didem is mentioning is also very important. We are aware from what distance a car is moving, and we can determine at what speed it's coming close to us, so we decide how to move fast or slow. And this is again a blessing from Allah, but we know that it shows with great clarity that all the images that are given to us in our brains are through the creation of Allah, and Allah only creates all the images, all the movements, and all the shapes and forms only in our brains, and we can never reach what is outside the reality of the matter. This means that only the soul exists, and only the images that Allah creates exist.